Hi there, and welcome back for another lesson in APUS history. We're beginning period 4 today, contextualizing period 4, topic 4.1. I'm your APUSH lady boss. Thanks for joining me. As always, you can grab some follow along notes in the description of the video below. So, to start, we are going to be looking at the objective. This is what the College Board wants you to know for this lesson. Explain the context in which the Republic developed from 1800 to 1848. So first, we really need to understand what is historical context, and we're going to dive into a couple examples of that, looking at the political, economic, and social circumstances of America before 1800, and then kind of where America ends up by the end. We're talking really broad overviews, trends, and patterns in this lesson. So, in my previous lessons, I've described contextualization a few different ways, like a funnel or a set of dominoes, what's knocking over the dominoes. Today, I want to describe it like a puzzle. So, if you like to do puzzles, you know that it's really important to pay attention to the pieces that are around it. So, you're going to be looking at color, you're going to be looking at shape, and you're going to try to identify some characteristics to help you find the piece. So, with history, events don't stand alone by themselves. They are impacted by other things, especially broad historical developments and processes. And so, what we're trying to do with contextualization is to describe what are those characteristics? What are those things that are happening that are impacting a specific historical event? So, when we think about America before 1800, we want to think about the political context. What is happening in the Republic before 1800? Well, in the years before this, we see a shift from Articles of Confederation, which is really a weak federal government, transitioning to a constitutional government under Washington and John Adams. So that's where period 3 ends, is with Adams' presidency. And so during this time period, we also see our first political parties developing, the Federalists and Democratic Republicans. Really, at the core of their difference is whether they want a strong federal government or not. And that impacts the way that they view domestic policy, foreign policy, the types of economic activity that should be happening. And so that's a really important context to understand, because there's going to be some pretty significant shifts in political parties in period 4. Washington's farewell address is another really important political document that happens near the end of period 3, where it's about how Washington encourages Americans to avoid political parties, avoid partisan politics. But that just simply is not going to be the case in the nation's history. However, in period 4, you will see a huge increase in patriotism and one political party for about 10 years. There's just one political party, kind of as Washington may have dreamed it. Another political issue that has huge ramifications for period 4 is going to be conflict over borders. So there's significant conflict with nations like Spain, France, and Britain, as well as American Indians. And so as America is expanding, we're going to see political issues developing with other nations. For the economic context, if you remember in period 3, there's a lot of economic challenges that are happening as a result of the weak federal government under the Articles of Confederation. So when the Constitution is ratified, Hamilton proposes his financial plan, and we start to see some recovery happen in the United States. However, there's also some additional foreign affairs that cause pretty significant economic disruptions. Those are going to continue into period 4 and end up leading to some pretty significant military conflict in the early 1800s. There's also going to be significant disagreements over the economic policy. Not everyone was in favor of Hamilton's financial plan. And so issues like the National Bank, the Whiskey Rebellion, those are going to fuel that political unrest and conflict between groups of people in the nation. So that those economic ideas are going to affect what we see happening in the 1800s, especially when we think about interactions with other nations, and then also how the nation deals with the ideas of emphasizing manufacturing and industry versus the emphasis on agriculture. That's going to be a pretty strong, prevalent thing happening in this period, 1800 to 1848. And then we have the social aspects, the social context for America. So, as we talked about in period 3, we are already seeing regional distinctions that are prevalent. Those are going to continue to grow as nations become more specialized. So, we have this Western frontier development, this very the idea of being a settler focusing on hard work and individualism. We see the Northeast focusing on business and commerce. That's going to become even more important as industrialization happens. And then the South becomes very much focused on agriculture, shifting really exclusively to cotton in this period. We also see socially the application of Enlightenment ideas being questioned. So, people like women. Does the Enlightenment, does the idea of natural rights and equality, does that apply to women? We see the development of different roles and opportunities for women in this period. We also see changes in attitudes about slavery. So, as the revolution ends, we see the North becoming more likely to support ideas of abolition, while the South does not. So, these are all some social pieces of information that help you to understand what's happening before we even dive into this unit. So by the end of 1848, what does America look like? Well, there's massive territorial expansion and population growth. So that's a really important pattern or trend that you're going to want to pay attention throughout. Not only how is America gaining new territory, how do the political parties feel about that? How does that affect political disagreements, national identity, regional specialization? We see the Federalist Party go away, and one political party happened for a while, and then the development of new political parties. Why does that happen? Really focusing on nationalism versus sectionalism. These are big themes that are happening. How are Americans becoming more patriotic? How are they identifying as Americans? But then also, what are the issues that are dividing our regions? As I already mentioned, big time economic changes with rapid industrialization and the regions becoming very focused on particular focuses of economics or economic activity. We see improved foreign policy interactions. So, in the early part of the period, you're going to be learning about some foreign policy conflicts that involve the military. And then, closer to the end of the period, you're going to see more interactions that use diplomacy and negotiation to deal with issues. And then, finally, kind of this overall development of a national culture. Ideas like the Second Great Awakening and reform movements, how do those demonstrate American values? There's a graph about new political parties and showing some of the transportation changes that are happening. And that idea of patriotism and nationalism that spread throughout the 1800s. So I hope this information was helpful for you in setting the stage for the context of this period. Again, remember, it's like a puzzle piece. If you're looking at a particular historical event, you want to make sure that you're understanding what are the things that are affecting it. What are the characteristics that should be understood in order to best understand this particular time in history? So I hope this lesson was helpful for you. And if so, please like and subscribe.